Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I'm your co-host Pablo, and here's my co-host.
Leo.
So today we have a very special episode for our listeners. We're not going to talk about fantasy football, but instead, we are going to do um, a recap of Last of Us season one, since season two is going to start on April 13th. So, um, for any of our listeners, there is going to be spoilers. So please make sure that you read the spoiler warning and then hear it. As again, there's going to be spoilers for season one if you have not watched the show. So, um, Last of Us, for anyone that does not know, is based off of, I believe it's a book, but for sure I know it is a video game, and the premise is there is a fungal parasite that essentially affects all of the human population, turns them into pretty much fungi, very similar to zombies. That is the premise, and right off the bat, episode one, if you have played the game, it is like mirror images in certain scenes because they actually asked for the help of um, the person that was involved in the games. I believe his name is like Neil something, if I'm not mistaken. Um, could be wrong.
Neil
In that,
Druckmann, maybe?
let me see. Just so I can, yeah, Neil Druckmann, yeah. Um, that first episode, it really hooked me. Um, Especially the ending of the first episode. Um, and again, the whole premise is a fungi infected all the human population. And theory is that it was found in like flour, that this one flour factory somewhere, I don't know if it was like Indonesia or something,
I believe so, yeah.
um, and that was ground zero. And of course, if you're sending flour all over the world, people use a ton of things that involve flour, and that is what started it all. The lead actors is Pedro Pascal and what is her name? Bella Ramsey, who
Bella Ramsey.
both were Game of Thrones actors. Of course, Pedro Pascal is probably a lot more famous than Bella Ramsey, but their depiction of Joel and Ellie, I mean, spot on. Do you think like any other actor or actresses could have portrayed them any better, Leo?
Uh, More than likely, anything's possible. But no, I think they really did very well. They, like you said, they were spot on with their portrayal of both characters. Pedro Pascal, he's proven that he can act in any type of different role, a variety of roles, and Bella Ramsey was phenomenal in her role in Game of Thrones as this badass little girl. So yeah, definitely. And Ellie is a badass little girl too. So she fit right in uh, with that character.
So let's kind of like a summary reaction of every episode. So again, episode one, that's what starts the whole thing, and as far as um the infection and whatnot, but the ending was the pivotal turning point. Is Joel had a daughter, and they were trying to escape Austin, which is where they were living, and the military ends up shooting Joel's daughter, which again kind of changed him not only as a father but as just a human being in general. And that kind of, leads Joel down a totally different path if his daughter would not have died. Do you think that was kind of like the turning point for Joel?
Yeah, no, definitely. In that first episode, you see how they were, they interacted with each other. Me as a dad having a daughter, I have a special bond with her, and so did Joel, with Sarah, as I believe is her name. So they, it's crazy, what happened, how everything started snowballing, into into that scene, when they're trying to escape from Austin, and trying all the different routes, everything's blocked off, and then driving through through the crowds and all that, and it was pretty intense as the episode wore on, for sure.
Yeah. Planes coming down, crashes, infected everywhere. Which kind of segues into a pretty important episode 2, which is when Ellie gets introduced, and pretty much every other time before Ellie got introduced, if you got infected by the fungi parasite, either getting bit or you know anything else that transmitted that parasite, you would become infected. Ellie, who is again a teenage girl, got bit, but she did not get infected, which had never happened before, ever since that whole infection started, which is very important because the possibility of using Ellie as a cure for the human race is essentially what a major plot point is. And, a lot of people are kind of torn between, do we sacrifice one person to, save the human race? And that is essentially what Joel and his friend Tessa clash over. They essentially, have some arguments of, what they should do. In the case of Ellie, and again, it's a very, very important plot point. It's a pivotal point. In Last of Us, they essentially get tasked with being like kind of quote unquote guardians of Ellie, as they have to take her. I believe that they're in Boston, if I'm not mistaken, or just one of the big sanctuary cities, and they have to take her to Seattle to try and see on if Ellie can be the savior, quote unquote, for the human race. Leo, where are you kind of on that debate of, should we sacrifice Ellie for the greater good? One of the big, debate points of science fiction or fantasy in general. Where
Yeah,
do you
no,
fall?
yeah, no, for sure. That's a difficult situation, especially for Joel, being that he lost his daughter as the season went on. You see that he didn't really want to get attached to Ellie, and as the season worn on, he did. He thought of her as his daughter, as a way of uh you know saving her, whatever it took. As the season wore on, especially when he made Tess made him promise whatever it takes, you do what you have to do to get her to wherever. So in terms of that, I understand why he did that. I think he should have let her, for the greater good, to try to solve the riddle of this disease that's been that was killing, causing all these infected to just grow. And it's a tough situation, but it's but when like I said, when you're a father and you get that attachment, it's tough to do, especially what he did. He took out everybody to go, and he became Joel Joel again, and just took care of business. But yeah, it's a tough decision, but it's something that you just have to try to let it go.
Now
Let the doctor do it.
the ending of episode 2 was, another pivotal point. Him and Tess are, trying to take Ellie to possibly see if she can become the cure, but of course they run into infected, and Tess unfortunately gets infected. So now not only has Joel lost his daughter, but he lost another important person that he cares about in Tess. And I think kind of like you were saying, that this is kind of starting to shape Joel already, post losing his daughter.
Yeah, he kind of shut himself out of that kind of like allowing himself the love of someone like
right.
that. So as a he just became attached as the season wore on. So what I also liked about the second episode, that it kind of like flashed back to the Indonesia where like you said, where all this started, and you kind of see how this transpired, talking about the flower, and then they went to a scientist that they see this fungi growing in someone that they found dead at the shoe, because she went out of control at the warehouse, where they were doing the factory where they're doing the flour. And they was funny that the security guard, the army guy, goes, what should we do? And he, she asked, what, is this that more people get out? He's like, yeah. And then she goes, I would just bomb the place, because it's gone, it's out.
Fun fact: so the fungus in Last of Us is called cordyceps, which is an actual real life fungus. So my wife's kind of deeply paranoid that this actually may happen, because cordyceps is real, but of course it's only able to infect like insects and things like that. But again, she's kind of still paranoid.
Sure.
And I mean, of course, like you said, the doctor, the scientist who had been studying this, is there's no cure, and unfortunately had to, she said that to bomb the whole city. Now, kind of segueing into episode 3, this one was a kind of change of pace, and they introduce a popular survivor from the game. His name is Bill. Think of Bill as kind of like your doomsday type prepper, who I don't know if you want to say thrives, but he is prepared. Once all of this happens and goes down, has guns, food, shelter,
Ready for
um,
war.
ready, ready for what happened in the show. And Joe and Ellie seek his advice because something that I forgot to mention as far as episode 1, Joel has a brother. His name is Tommy, and essentially they kind of go their own ways after Joel's daughter died. Of course, I'm not saying that they immediately split up, but at some point they got separated. And Joel is trying to find Tommy, and he asks for Bill's advice. And not to take away from Bill, but it's a episode that is important to the story. I don't know necessarily about Joel and Ellie's story, but it's a nice little side story episode. I like Bill personally. I think they chose a really great actor to portray Bill. What did you think of Bill's episode?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a change of pace. Being at this world, that we live in, those they introduced a character Frank as well. That him and Bill, that they grow together and stuff like that. So it was very interesting um episode, like about love. Hey, love can be found at any time, and it was definitely nice. It was a nice story to see that, and they show some backflashes of when Bill, Joel, and Tess met up with Bill and Frank and all that. So it kind of like showing the connection why that Bill and Joel were kind of similar, and Tess and Frank were kind of similar. So it was interesting, to see that connection that they had with each other. Each pairing. It's pretty interesting.
Yep, totally agree. Nice change of pace. Like you said, especially in that setting of what the world would be. Was cool. That Bill and Frank were able to find each other. Because like you said, especially in those times, it's about love. Now, these next few episodes kind of, to me, were one of the better ones of the entire series. And they find a truck, trying to get them, to their destination of Seattle a lot quicker. Because if you think about it, going from Boston to Seattle on foot would take an extraordinary amount of time. And they were able to, get into a truck. That truck got them all the way to Kansas City. I'm not really good with geography, so I'm not really sure how far or how close that got them, but unfortunately they ran into some problems into Kansas City. The I guess that setting of the end of the world really shows you how things can get desperate and pretty quickly, especially us as humans, fight for survival. Limited resources, all that stuff. So they run into some people who were asking for help, but they weren't really asking for help. Of course,
Plain
a working truck is pretty rare in that setting. So they had to abandon it due to that. And of course, Joel's trying to protect Ellie as best he can. It's kind of hard when it's just one man against several people who also have guns. And again, they run into some, if you want to call them rebels. So for our Star Wars fans, a little nod to that. Just again being based off of that setting. Would you be more inclined to be like a strength in numbers, or kind of like keep to your own, kind of like Joel and Bill?
Uh, Me personally, I tend to be alone. I'm a lonely child, so I'm used to doing things on my own. I can get along, with as in a group setting or be alone. But sometimes when you get to these when things like this start happening, um, as we saw like you say in Kansas City, I think what was happening here, what they may seem like the government which was taking over were kind of like being over abusive, and then I think then these rebels kind of took things a little too far, and they took over, but they were also probably worse on how to treat people and stuff like that. So there was informants that they were taking killing and trying to find a certain character, and so it was definitely interesting. But me, I'd probably be like a lone wolf if I can, me and my family, and stuff like that, if possible.
I agree.
How about you?
I definitely agree. I think I'm not saying to like completely not trust people, but man, again, especially
It's tough.
if
Yeah.
that were to happen, it's tough, man, because they could, the worst comes out because again, resources and like you said, the government can be overreaching, and who knows if there would even be any form of government if that actually were to happen.
Yeah. I'll
So
be
it's
very happy
tough.
in I'll be very happy in Bill's compound for sure.
Man, they had a whole town, bro. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Um, the fifth episode, which is after they run into the rebels and they draw the attention of the rebel leader, whose name is
Kathleen, right?
Kathleen,
Yeah.
but essentially in um the very end of episode 4 is they run into um a,
Henry.
a brother, his
Yeah.
name's Henry, his younger brother, who are essentially trying to um leave Kansas City because of the conflict that is happening um in Kansas City. And it's kind of like a mirror of Joel and Ellie, in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Sam. I
they
think Sam was his name, the younger brother.
they decide to kind of, I would say, team up, because their interests are aligned at the moment. But you can tell that Joel is very hesitant. Ellie, of course, younger, teenage, so she's a little bit more trusting um, than Joel. Um, and the end of that episode is probably one of the scenes that is most iconic, especially if you played the game. And there's different types of infected. There's clickers. There's what they call them, bloaters, which is essentially what the nick of episode 5 is. Big infected, um, that comes from underneath the ground. And then before that, kind of like an iconic part that I remember from the game is when Joel is like in the second story of a house at the end of the house, and Ellie's with Henry and Sam, and he has to protect all of them um, from the rebels that are trying to get to them. And again, I just remember that being pretty cool part of the game, and when I saw that in the show, I was like, I totally remember that. Um, that again, that whole scene, probably like a good 20 minutes of that episode. I don't know what I would have done. Like if I were to come across that, huge, Hulk like infected. I mean, what do you do? The rebels had a whole an assortment of weapons, and it didn't even scratch the surface.
Run.
I mean, can you though? Like realistically,
I know.
like.
I know. No, that scene was crazy. What's crazy is that the Kathleen knew about that was kind of happening underneath, and the like her right hand man was saying, "Hey, should we tell the others?" And she's like, "No, let's not at this moment." So she kind of I think his name was Perry maybe, but he was saying, "Look, we should. This is this is a serious situation." And yeah, when it got down to the point at that scene, that he's trying to clear the way. Joel's sniping people, kind of like what you do when you play your video games. Sniping from a corner there, taking people out. They were able to. He gave them enough cover to get by, and Kathleen got what she deserved as a little small kid. In fact, it took her out. So at the end, so it was very very intense scene for sure. And to see all those infected coming out of the ground, it was wild. It was very wild.
And if I'm not mistaken, Kathleen's right hand man is the voice actor for Tommy in the game, if I remember correctly, which a lot of cool like Easter eggs like that, which I really enjoyed. Now the ending of this episode was pretty gut wrenching. They are able to make it out. Sam, Henry, Joel, and Ellie. I think they find like a abandoned hotel, and at the end you see that Sam actually got bit through that whole altercation with the infected and the rebels, and Ellie shows Sam she was infected too, and she essentially cuts herself to try and use her blood to try and save Sam. Fortunately, that does not happen. So in the next episode, beginning of the very next episode, they wake up, and of course, Sam becomes infected, and Henry has to make the really hard choice of killing his little brother. Because of that, then Henry turns the gun on himself. So in 6 episodes in, all of this happening, especially with everything that Joel's gone through, now Ellie is starting to see what life is post-infection. I think again that was probably a turning point for Ellie for sure. I mean, she already saw Tess at the beginning die, but now you're talking about a kid, and being a teenager, maybe finding a friend is hard, especially for kids in that setting. That again, that to me was one of the turning points for this character. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. When you're a kid herself, she's a little, older than Sam was, but it's the tough reality that the world that they're living in this show. There's decisions that have to be made, and as much as it's tough to get attached to anyone because at any moment they can get infected, and then you gotta turn on them yourself to survive. So it's which there's a scene coming in a couple episodes forward that something that she went through. So it's a tough situation that that unfortunately the reality you gotta go through sometimes. That's tough for sure.
Now these next few episodes essentially them trying to search for not only Tommy but a group of people called the Fireflies, which is essentially think about it as like just a group of people who are trying to restore some type of order in this apocalyptic world. The Fireflies are supposedly the group of people that are gonna try and see if they can come up with a cure for this infection. So these next few episodes is again they go deeper into dangerous territory, trying to search for the Fireflies and Tommy. So again, with everything that we've spoken about, Joel's not very trusting. Ellie's starting to become a little bit more untrusting. And like Leo was saying, Joel does not want to get attached to Ellie because of what happened to his daughter. But little by little, they're starting to form a bond. And in episode 7, I believe that's the flashback episode
Yes.
with Ellie.
Yeah, Ellie. Yeah.
Um,
Ellie and Riley. Yeah.
Ellie and Riley, they, when this happened, they decide to kind of sneak off and go to like an abandoned mall.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Ellie had a close bond with Riley, pretty much really close in age. They're stuck in a mall, and then of course tragedy strikes. After they enjoy their little outing, Infected happens to get to them, and this is kind of what started and changed everything for Ellie, because she actually did not get infected, which is kind of again what kind of started all this. I think that was a really good episode, and I say that with a grain of salt, just because I'm not always a huge fan of flashbacks. I would much rather the story happen chronologically. But I think this was a good episode to do it. Kind of leading up to these final episodes. What did you think of that flashback episode with Ellie and Riley?
Yeah. No, it was it's good to see these flashbacks when it's appropriate. And what was good about when this happened was it in this early in this episode, Joel is gets in the last of the previous episode, he got knifed, and he was infected himself with trying to uh, he was infected with because the blade was dirty and this and that, so he was just infected. So it was he was telling Ellie, please just go, don't worry about me, try to survive yourself. And as she was walking out the door, that's when she flashed back to that moment, with that thing that happened to Riley. They were both in a training to be kind of like a cadet for the authority and over there in I think in Boston. And Riley, you know, left that, kind of ran away, and she came back. They kind of because out Riley and her were best friends, and what happened was that Riley became a Firefly herself. So it was interesting to the what Firefly stood for and what they were initially trying to uh, be like the part of the army to go against the Fireflies. So it was interesting the points of views that they would go with each other. But like I said, they were best friends. They had a very nice night. Um, that Riley took her to Ellie, and but it was that day she was trying to let her know that look, she's leaving to Atlanta. They were leaving, and so it was that whole what was like their one last night kind of. So it was a very nice episode seeing that happen, and then when without them knowing there was an infected there, they bit both of them. They were able to kill the infected, but eventually Riley turned um, you know to an infected herself, while um, Ellie never did. So she had to take her out, unfortunately. So it was a tough, your best friend, having to take that out. So it was a very good episode, to see that flashback, and that kind of gave her Ellie the nerve to go back and save Joe, sewing him up, and to attend that episode. Really nice.
Which segues into these last two. So kind of like Leo was saying, um, Joel told Ellie to save herself. Ellie got the courage to not leave him, so she goes out of where they were at in search for something that can help Joel. And I remember again this from the game. And it was really interesting to kind of play from Ellie's point of view, and that's kind of what this episode is about, because she is, trying to find a way to save Joel, but she comes across paths with a very vengeful group of survivors. And kind of like Leo was saying, she kind of got the courage, just kind of gave Ellie some fighting spirit, but drew some unwanted attention from that group of survivors leader, and essentially halfway through, Joel kind of gets some energy to be able to get up from his very weakened state, to try and search for Ellie. And I just remember in the game when Ellie's kind of, I think it was like a restaurant with their leader, and essentially Ellie got captured. She was in a jail cell, and she was able to escape the jail cell, and then she comes again toe to toe with I don't even remember what his name is, but the leader
David,
of that group, David.
David, I think.
And I believe the restaurant catches fire, and it's still Ellie against David. And the ending of this episode was probably one of the more iconic lines from this entire series. What was your thoughts on that episode 8?
Yeah, no, this is another intense episode. Like I said, you see Ellie having to survive basically on her own. She's on her own, because Joe's out. She was able to, get him some medicine and stuff like that. And but they kind of she got into a real tough predicament for sure. And like I said, the tension just continues to build in each of these episodes, and to see her come through, doing whatever it took to survive is is excellent. It was it was awesome to see her just take these those two guys out. It was badass, I must say.
Totally agree with you. And like we were saying, the ending of the episode, Joel, or was it this one or the the last one when oh, it had to be this one when I think he called her baby or something,
Uh-huh.
baby girl or something.
Baby girl. Baby girl, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Joel was able
I
to
got you, baby girl. I got you.
he was able to rescue her, and he says the iconic line of "I got your baby girl," which
Mm-hmm.
never would have thought would have happened.
Yeah.
After episode 1, because like we've been talking about, Joel kind of shut himself off from everyone, and then he caved.
Yeah.
In episode 8,
Yeah, that's
which
what I think
leads
that's a
us.
I think that was definitely the episode that ending right there made him like totally in love with
With
not
Ellie,
as a like her like his new daughter,
right?
So that was cool.
Which leads us to a really great season finale of Joel and Ellie finally getting to the Firefly's
Flies.
base, um, and essentially they get to the base, and the staff there, doctor there, they can essentially work on a cure, but the caveat to that is that Ellie would have to die. And after Joel finds that out, he doesn't like that. So he kind of makes the decision of, does Ellie die, who, like Ellen was saying, is kind of like my new daughter, or do I save her from becoming the cure for the human race? Remember this vividly from the game because I didn't think that he would make that choice. And they show it in the episode. And yeah, the Joel makes the choice that he thought was best. And I think at the end of this, they get to where Tommy's at.
I think they're on the way to Tommy's, but they didn't get there. They were getting close to it or something. They were on the way there.
Because I think I remember.
At least in the I don't know about the
Ellie,
video game, but in the show.
Ellie waking up, right? And like asking him what happened.
Right. Yeah, she
Um,
woke up in the back of the car. He
in
was
the
driving
back of
away.
the car. Yeah.
Yeah, because he became Rambo, took everybody out, and then and then even Marlene, which was his uh, uh, well, what was good about this episode too in the beginning was we actually see why Ellie is has that trait to be able to that possibly has a cure in her, because what happens is that Ellie's mom was bit while she was basically giving birth, and so she was so it looks like somehow Ellie got some of the in her a little bit, I guess, right when she gave birth, and then she basically got bit, cut, cut the cord, and so it was really very quick, but I guess that was enough to give her whatever is in her blood to get to have it possibly create a cure. So that was it was interesting. It was nice to see that why this is possible with her. So that was a cool thing. But basically Ali comes to when she wakes up, she's like, what happened? And then Joel's basically saying, look, um it was just couldn't work. They were able to find someone else with other people just like you, and they were able to do it. So don't worry about it. Everything's good. So he kind of like played it off like nothing happened, and so it was yeah, it was tough, man. It was a tough thing right there, that's for sure.
Yeah, which kind of leads us to, not this weekend, but the following weekend, we'll find out how that relationship, dynamic is going to play out in season 2. I know one of the things people did not like from season 1 is there wasn't that much infected, and supposedly season 2 is going to have a lot more of it. So
Can't wait for that.
really excited to see how season 2 turns out. Like you said, he just became Rambo. Made the decision that he thought was best, and wasn't gonna let anybody stop him from getting to baby girl.
That's it. For sure.
So for any of our listeners who have not seen season 1, again, remember I said the spoiler warning. Hope you guys can maybe binge watch it before season 2 starts on April 13th. We will see if we can kind of do some of these episodes here and there, even though as we're gearing up for the NFL draft and basically the start of our fantasy season, if you want to call it that. But we'll see. See if we can do some more of these. Leo, any last words?
Yeah, no. I hope you guys like the switch hitting that we did here with a curveball that we threw out to you guys. Hope you guys like the episodes. Hope we'll come up with some more, maybe some Andor when that comes out. But hope you guys like the show. If you have any questions, talk about Last of Us, any other movie, or even some fantasy football questions, you can reach me on X at Smooth1074. I hope you guys like the show. Click that like button and tell a friend, and hope you guys enjoy the show.
Like you said, you guys can share, we're on all major platforms. And I hope you guys, like you said, enjoyed this Last of Us episode. Thanks, everyone.
Peace.